Hi, everyone. This is Bob Dietrich with another edition of the ADHD Toolbox. And I have got a special guest on our show. And you're going to love this guest because he, like me, has a large audience of people that he does a regular show on. It's called Crusher TV. And this is Alan Brown. Alan, welcome to our show today.
Great to be here, Bob.
Alan has done many interviews with many different experts, and he has a great resource, as just like the ADHD Toolbox is, to get lots of information. In fact, he's got more interviews than I do. I highly recommend that you look him up, and we're going to give you some links below so you can connect with Alan. And today we're going to focus on motivational strategies and different, what he calls brain hacks to help yourself get through the day, be more productive, and help manage those executive functions so you can get and achieve the goals that you're looking to achieve. So Alan, well, welcome to our program, and tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in this, and how did you create Crusher TV?
Well, I'm someone who was diagnosed with ADHD later in life, actually at the age of 36, I think, 37.
Wow.
And so I went through school, not really doing any homework. Luckily, this was back at a time when you could kind of get away with that.
Yeah.
But of course, when I got to college, then I hit that wall. I just could not keep up. So I was in and out of college, and I was putting myself through college, and I was bartending. And at one point, I had been a recreational drug user, and I realized, or I found, that certain drugs would actually help me focus. And I started, and I was actually starting to deal drugs also. I was a bartender who was selling drugs over the bar. And once I sort of discovered that I could actually focus and do the difficult work of at that time I was studying economics, I just kept using it and using it more and more. My drug dealing business was not very profitable. I was taking all the profits, but I managed, and I'm not suggesting that this is wise, but I ended up on the dean's list a couple of semesters.
Wow.
Then I was not diagnosed, so I had no idea that what I was self-medicating for. But in the end, I ended up hitting absolute bottom as a drug addict. And I was about 8 years old. It was only then that I finally got my degree. It took me 10 years to get that 4-year degree. I managed to pull myself out of that. I finally got a real job, which was in the advertising business. And okay, now I've gotten pretty much beyond the drugs. I've got a real job now. I was almost 30 years old with an entry-level job at a big agency in New York paying $17,000 a year. And but I was gung-ho. I busted my butt. I worked Saturdays. I worked into the evenings. And after 6 years, I was only like up 1 or 2 rungs on the ladder. And mind you, everybody around me, all my peers, were like 7 years younger than me because they didn't take 10 years to get their 4-year degree. Luckily, I looked younger than my actual age. But
hey, you look pretty young.
Yeah, I'm knock on wood. And thank you, Mom, for the wherever you got this olive skin. But around this time, somebody gave me an audio book. It was Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And in it, there's a lot of woo-woo stuff, but there's also some very practical stuff. And what I learned from that audio book is that most of the stuff that's happening up here in our brain is just BS. It's ego-based stuff. It's a lot of petty judgments, etc. And when I kind of realized, I was like, wow, I can actually listen to that and discern what's BS and what's not. And that allowed me to start being able to quiet my mind a little bit. And now I could focus a little bit more. I also got an audio book of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and learned some powerful brain hacks there and ways of being. And I just started to be able to get some traction in my career. not long after, I started sort of accumulating these, what I call brain hacks, because they're really just ways of flipping switches up in your brain to change the way you view something. Um, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then we were really off to the races, because now I understood why my brain wasn't working the way I wanted it to. I understood why I had become addicted, because I was self-medicating, et cetera. And more importantly, I could now really get into studying ways to make my brain go. And in the space of only about 2 years, I went from a low-level executive at the age of 36, don't tell anybody, making mid five figures, which is kind of poverty level even back then in New York City, to, in about 2 years, to vice president, management director, and employee of the year, making six figures at the biggest ad agency in the country at the time. So that's why I call myself a mess to success coach, and or mess to success entrepreneur. At around that time I was named Employee of the Year, I had already co-founded a startup with two partners in my spare time that later was sold for 8 figures. So it was a really wonderful, blessed turnaround. But when I started to realize that I had so many of these brain hacks and they were working so well for me, I thought, well, I've got to teach this stuff. So I created ADD Crusher. You can learn more about that at addcrusher.com, which are instructional kind of virtual coach videos that help with classic ADHD problems. And about 4 years ago, I created Crusher TV, which is an online library of over 100 mini master classes on productivity, things like beating procrastination, beating the overwhelm, prioritizing, time management, et cetera. And that's a membership. You can find out more about that at crushtv.com. And I'm also a coach. I have a number of groups. I have a handful of private clients. And it's been a wonderful ride. And it's so wonderful to come on to summits like this one and be able to share the ways I've been able to really get traction, including maintaining motivation and having better willpower, which I'm really excited about talking about today.
Yeah, lots to unpack there, because first of all, what occurs to me is, our interview with Russell Barkley, which you've interviewed Russell Barkley a couple times, and his statistics on mortality rates of people who have ADHD and drug use is one of the reasons why the mortality rates are so darn high. Higher than diabetes, higher than heart disease. And I know you've heard this before. If you're watching this video, you've heard it a lot. And we're trying to drive the point home, is that manage your ADHD, because it can be dangerous. And if you have children, make sure they get in good habits of managing it, because that could be a downfall. It could have really brought you down, and luckily you pulled yourself out.
Absolutely. I am lucky to be alive. I was buying my drugs in Harlem at the height of the crack epidemic. I could have had my brains blown out on any day,
right,
for the 10 or 20 or 30 bucks that were in my pocket. So yeah, I'm very blessed. And I actually did a TED talk about this subject, the fact that 85% of adults with ADHD in the US, 9 million of them in the US alone, don't know they have it. So they could be walking around doing this self-medication or engaged in risky behaviors and not know why. And we ADDers tend to end up in the criminal justice system more often than others. And then, as you mentioned, Bob, all these other social issues and worse.
How did you kick the habit? How did you switch it off? Because I mean, when you start using drugs, it's difficult to get off sometimes. I understand.
It wasn't an easy thing, and it wasn't a quick thing. The first thing that happened was my mother was dying of ovarian cancer, and she was at a hospital on the Upper East Side. It's Mount Sinai, very famous hospital. And I would go there to visit her when I could. And as soon as I would get there, and she's 82 pounds, bald, tubes everywhere, very frail. And I would just go and hold her hand. And every time I'd get there, because I was a drug addict, I would 10 minutes in, I'd be like, "Oh, Mom, I love you, but I got to actually need to be somewhere else. So I got to go." And she would, of course, say, "It's okay, go do what you need to do." And what I needed to do was get to Harlem and get the drugs. And I was doing this a lot. But one of those days that this happened, you know, I just came home to my apartment in Jersey City, and I just looked at myself in the mirror and said, this is insane what you're doing. Your mother is dying and you are choosing this. So there was that. It was also getting that job. So for the first time, I really had something to lose. I'd gotten married around then. Now I had that to lose. So it was about having things to lose. It was about sort of seeing myself for the absurdity of what I was doing. And it was also seeing that my future was wide open. I could now choose. And also that I was tired of not having control of my brain. Again, I didn't know at the time that I was ADHD, but I just got tired of having this thing run my life. So, you know, it's not a sexy story of, you know, cold turkey and, you know, one day and this is typically how folks emerge from drug addiction is, you know, it takes some time and some doing. And
Yeah.
I'm blessed to be here.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to unpack a little bit is the discussion around entrepreneurship. A lot of people with ADHD become entrepreneurs. Allows them to be more creative. They're on their own schedule, but you know that can go south too if you don't manage yourself and you don't know how to manage yourself. So I assume some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are strategies on how to manage yourself, right?
Yeah, and what a great segue, Bob, by the way. You know, some of the, the typical sources of motivation come from outside us, like having a boss, you know, having colleagues that are depending on you, right? We don't need to generate our own motivation. It's like fear of messing that up. But yeah, when you're an entrepreneur, you're just answering to yourself. You have to stay on schedule. You have to get stuff done, not for somebody else, but for your own business. And really, it is a great place to kind of launch into this topic. And, you know, you think about motivation, you know, why is it that sometimes we're feeling it and so much of the time we're just not, you know, we get all fired up to jump into a new project, for instance. It's that initial novelty, but that wears off, and then we're not that fired up anymore. And soon it's just another annoying, unfinished entry on our to-do list, right?
Right.
And you think about willpower, which, you know, we generally associate willpower with avoiding negative things and motivation with pursuing the things we need to pursue. Well, that's not purely true. Both of them go both ways. But you know, why is it sometimes we're able to resist temptations like social media or ice cream or blowing off the gym for some binge TV watching? And other times, you know, maybe not so often, but we feel invincible. And a sad fact of life is that motivation and willpower are generally unreliable. So, you know, the question is, how can we get back that initial go-get-'em energy to finish that project? And once we're back at it, how can we fend off the temptation to chase that tempting squirrel or shiny object, right?
Right. And so these are what you call brain hacks, right? These techniques that we're going to talk about now, you call them brain hacks, which are motivational strategies on how to get yourself moving, so you don't have to rely on the self motivation and the and the willpower, right?
Correct.
You actually have techniques. So let's dive into them. How many do you have that we're going to cover?
There's actually there are a handful of what I call brain hacks, just ways to hack your brain. But there are also a couple of just general strategies. So I just want to help us better understand willpower, because when we can understand what it's all about, it's easier for us to defend what willpower we have. So willpower is typically defined as something, you know, like self-control deliberately exerted to do something or to restrain one's own impulses, right? So it's not just willpower. In fact, it's most often it's won't power, right? The power to not do something that the brain's
exactly.
So, you know, I won't do this tempting thing that is not in my long-term interest. And the more willpower and won't power we're able to bring to the battle, the better we can control our attention, our emotions, and our actions, right? But the other key thing to know about willpower is that it is a depletable resource. It's like gas in our car's fuel tank. We could start the day with a full tank of energy and willpower, and the two are very closely associated, as I'll discuss in a second. And there are things we are doing throughout our day that are naturally and also needlessly burning our energy and our willpower. So in a lot of ways, we're undermining our own willpower every day.
Mhm.
So here's a sort of a hack around willpower, right? So the most important thing is for you to know your willpower signals. The psychologist, Kelly McGonigal, who says, knowing how and when you're likely to give in allows you to support yourself and avoid the traps that lead to willpower failure. So you got to get in touch with when you're low on that fuel. And again, just to touch back on this, the physiology of willpower, it's been shown by relatively recent research that when we have less blood glucose and glucose in our brain, and protein that fuel our alertness, etc., we are more likely to be weak on willpower. It's something called ego depletion. If you look that up, you'll see exactly what I mean. But don't go look that up. Listen to me, because I'm going to give you all the good stuff, right? So when you are low
Mhm.
on energy and just feeling, I don't really want to, you've got to acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge it, it's going to be a triple whammy of frustration, additional fuel burning, and then the confidence crushing as you fail to get the results from your efforts. So how do you know when you're low? When you're hungry, especially if you are craving sugar, carbs, or junk food. That's when you're going to be really low. That's your brain, by the way, screaming for glucose. But don't take that bait. Make sure that you, when you are hungry or low on energy, you get protein and whole grains and nutrient-rich foods. Don't ever, as so many ADDers do, don't ever prop yourself up with a sweet drink or caffeine to some extent, but not if it's in a sugary drink, and no chips or pretzels and stuff like that. All right.
The
So
Snickers doesn't work like they say on TV, right?
what's that?
They said Snickers doesn't work like they say on TV, right?
No, it doesn't. Although it's a little bit better than pure junk, because at least it has some nuts in there.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So when you're fatigued, when you're sleepy, or when you're grumpy, knowing when you're running low allows you to pause and refuel rather than just get more and more frustrated.
Mhm.
So that's the basics of willpower, and that's all we really need to get into on that. I want to talk now about motivation, right? And there are many sources of motivation. They're both external, as I mentioned before. It's like our boss, our colleagues. There's also that looming deadline at the 11th hour. But there's also internal motivations like passion, but also fear and guilt. Those can be motivations. But like willpower, motivation it's not reliable. This wonderful book called Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. He's famous for his Fogg behavioral model. He's at Stanford University. And that model explains all human behaviors, including habit formation. And he says motivation is like a party animal friend, great for a night out, but not someone you would rely on to pick you up from the airport. I love that quote. And also the typical sources of motivation aren't always the best. They're mostly not of our choosing, which means they're not always in our control. But there is one, call it bottomless source of motivation, that is purely of our making, and it's on our own mind. Actually, it's in our own neurochemistry, and we can affect that. And there is a brain hack that turns on the neurotransmitters that fire up your brain and give you more motivation in the face of daunting or unpleasant tasks. And I call it nagging desires. So, imagine if you could be more motivated at any given time to do the tough stuff, to do the drudgery or the mundane, with less effort and stress. Well, in my ADD Crusher videos, I quote Dr. Russell Barkley, one of the top authorities on the ADHD brain, as you know, who says we can use our emotions to fuel our fuel tanks. And in my approach, that emotional fuel is desire, right? Again, what I call nagging desire. So there are negative nags and there are positive nags. So a negative nag is something that pushes you out of old habits of the past, kind of like a best friend gently but firmly reminding you that your ex really was a nightmare, so you don't want to go back to that. And you say, "Oh yeah, you're right. Thank you very much." So your negative nag should be rooted in the things that you despise most about your ADHD related failures, past or present. So for me, my negative nags were that, I just hate that it took me 10 years to finish a 4-year degree. I hated that the person in the office next to me always seemed to be able to blast through all kinds of work, reports, emails, phone calls, and those negotiations simultaneously. And then, while I was laboring to complete half her workload in twice the time, she was out the door at 5 p.m. So I despise that. And I don't want that for myself. So I also despise the fact that I wasted about a decade of my life, just excuse my language, dicking around with drugs and booze and some other stuff. That's just that. So I keep that in mind. That's my negative nag. I don't want to be there. I don't want to have anything to do with that irresponsibility or that poor work ethic or whatever. Now, a positive nag is like a rope tied around your waist that gently but firmly pulls you into the future, right? It's like a constant reminder that reminds you, hey, I decided to change things because I want to move into a better future and become the me I always knew I could. So that positive nag for you could be, just spending more time with your kids. It could be attracting an awesome mate. It could be financial freedom or whatever that might bring that's important to you. And the thing with either of these nags is to take the time to write them out. Write out 5, 6, 7 of your negative nags, the things that you don't want more of in your life, either from your past or from the future. And then write down some positive nags and make it as grand division as you like, so long as you really want it and believe that it's possible, right? There's in coaching, there's another way to describe these exercises. It is identifying your whys. Why is it that I want to succeed? Why is it that I want to do the right thing? It might be for my kids, or it might be for my marital relationship, or whatever that is. And the more emotionally charged, well-defined whys you can come up with, your negative nags and positive nags, you can call on them anytime you need extra motivational push. So I'll pause for a moment before we get into some more tactical ways to keep both our motivation and willpower from running out, and just see if there's any questions that you had, Bob, or anything you want to dive into a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I've heard this a little bit before, and yours seems to go a little bit deeper, but you have the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot is the positive nag that motivates you forward, and the stick is the negative nag that kind of beats you up. It says, hey, and they both push you forward. And keep you from going back into some of the negative stuff you don't want. And then you have the Tony Robbins pleasure pain principle, right?
Yes.
Naturally, you're moving toward pleasure and away from pain. And so if you can put more pleasurable goals in front of you, and keep reminding yourself of the painful stuff that you don't want to go to, you can kind of move yourself that way as well.
And this is something that you construct yourself, and it's something that because you constructed it, and if it really is true for you, and emotional for you, it's a source that you can go to again and again and again. But now, so far we've talked about, understanding willpower, and the fact that, it comes and goes, and it actually goes like this over the course of a day. There's research that says every time you make a decision, you are eating away at your willpower, because again, that takes glucose and energy away from you. So there's kind of keeping track of where you are and noticing whether you're hungry or tired or grumpy or angry or whatever those are, and then trying to do a reset. That will help reset your willpower. And then there is doing this more strategic kind of negative nag and positive nag. But I love getting into really tactical things that are really easy to use, really easy to understand. And the first one of these hacks is what I call strong times, strong versus weak times. So the idea is only do your toughest tasks during your mentally strongest times of day, right? Think about when during the day you are at your mentally best. Everybody's different, but most people would say that that's in the morning. For a few, it might be in the late morning, early afternoon. For a smaller percentage, night owls, it might be at night. But think about it this way. to try to, if you don't already know when your mentally strong time is, if you had to complete a really tricky 2-hour project and you could schedule those 2 hours anytime over the next 24 hours, when would you want to do it? That's a good way to kind of, well, I would definitely not want to do that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? That would be me. I would like, no way.
Yeah.
So once you know your mentally strongest time of day, what you want to do is start scheduling all of your toughest tasks in that time period to the extent possible. Now, we can't always dictate what's going to happen every day. But so for instance, if you were working at a company, you want to try to make sure that none of your meetings, if you're, let's say their strong time is 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., let's just say, you don't want to schedule any meetings during that time. You want to be able to be sitting at your desk and doing the difficult work, those tough emails, that tough project, et cetera, and block those off. So for me, the toughest kind of work I do is researching, writing, and editing. It's hard for me. I'm a super slow reader. The book I was just talking about, BJ Fogg's Tiny Hat. No, it was another book. It's right behind me. Oh, I moved it. It's called Alter Egos. It took me a month and a half to read half of the book. So that's how slow a reader I am. And I'm also slow when I do research and writing. But it is my bread and butter. I put out content, and that's how really I make my living mostly. All right. So I'm slow at this, and it quickly drains my energy. So, and therefore my motivation and my willpower, right? So, but my strong time is from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. So in my calendar, every day from 8 to 11 is blocked off for writing. And it just says writing. Every day, if you were to look at my calendar horizontally, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., every day blocked off, and it just says writing, right? So nobody can schedule a meeting or a coaching session with me in these hours. And I never schedule a doctor's appointment or a plumber or even coffee with a friend in that time slot. So this is really simple. Find those strong times, block them off, and make a commitment to do your toughest work in that time. And you will have more motivation and more willpower to get through that work.
Awesome. That's a fantastic tip. And what I've noticed too is when I have a list of things to do, right? I will notice that if I do the smaller, easier tasks first, if I want to get motivated, I'm not motivated to do anything. If I do those first, I will build up momentum, right? And because of the dopamine release, and this is a way to kind of engage your neurochemicals. That dopamine release after getting 2 or 3 of those small tasks done.
Yep.
Now I'm ready to jump into the big ones too.
Yep.
So that's a strategy I use that's similar and could even piggyback onto yours as far as using your own biochemistry.
Yep. Although I like that strategy, and I sometimes do that too. I don't always dive straight into the toughest thing.
Right.
But one thing we have to watch out for as ADDers is we will too often just stay on the easy tasks because they're easy. And then we'll end up spending, let's just say, an hour doing these easier tasks, because what we have ended up doing is we've escaped from, it's like an excuse. Well, I'm still doing this other stuff, but it's not, we're not coming back and say, wait a minute. I need to get on this tough thing. And I'm not gonna escape into the easier stuff anymore. So
yeah, it's a way to avoid.
So next are what I call power rituals.
Okay.
And if you could power through your day, thinking more clearly, getting more top priority tasks banged out, and actually having reserves of energy at quitting time, that's what power rituals can do. I use 3 different power rituals every day. A morning planning ritual, which everybody should be doing. I'm not going to get into that right now. A work session ritual, which is every time you sit down to work on a tough thing, you do a certain ritual. Could be just re-upping your coffee, taking in some protein, doing a little brief 2-minute, I'm just going to sit here and rest my brain for 2 minutes. It could be a whole bunch of things. I have a great work session ritual that I use several times a day. But then there is, after every work session, or when I feel mentally fatigued during a work session, I do a recovery ritual. All right? And this is sort of related to that willpower stuff I was talking about. When you feel fatigued or tired or angry or grumpy, do a check. But you can repair things by doing any of a number of the following. So get a protein refuel, right? Do some brief exercise. just get up and take a walk outside. Do a quick meditation. And it doesn't have to be Aum. It can just be 2 minutes of just sitting down, eyes closed, and just listening to your breathing, just to sort of and when you have a thought come in, you just go, all right, that's baloney, and throw that out or whatever. Just doing that is almost like having a power nap. If you can, you might do a power nap. I often just go lie down on the sofa, say, Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes, whatever it is. Oh, good, she's not doing it now. And then just trying to doze off for even a few minutes. And then when that's done, that's great. But also you could do a power pose. You might have heard of these. It's when you just kind of stand for 2 minutes, hands on hip, chin up, do some breathing. And that actually helps to get your testosterone going. We all have it, men and women both. And it actually increases oxygen to your brain. It reduces your cortisol, a bunch of other good things. Another power ritual is a recovery ritual is venue change. So this is where you just get up and move to a different workspace, whether, right here in your office, or get up and go to, sometimes I'll go out on my balcony or out to the pool. Often I will go get in my truck and just drive. I live a couple blocks from the ocean, and I'll just go and park my truck by the ocean and just sit in the passenger seat with my decaf, my Ritalin, my protein, and my laptop, and just go. So changing where you're working actually has a lot of power to it. That's a great power ritual. But the key is to ritualize some form of recovery after every work session. And again, whenever you're feeling, fatigued, down, kind of not that interested anymore, right?
Got it.
So here's, I'll wrap up with this kind of weird but powerful hack. And there is a great deal of research. I only do evidence-based stuff. I have probably said this to Bob a gazillion times. I don't do woo-woo, and I don't do rah-rah cheerleading. I like stuff that is evidence-based. And so that's in my ADD Crusher videos, and it's also in every episode of Crusher TV. It's just I want all the stuff to be evidence-based. So here it is. It's called self-talk, right? So what if you had a great coach with you all the time, right? Reminding you to stay focused over here. This is your bread and butter over here. Or providing a reality check. Yeah, this whole thing you're worried about, it's total BS. Or helping you recover from a setback. All right, so you screwed up. Now, what's the next play? Or maybe a timely bit of encouragement, Wait, you're not sure you can? Why not you? And here's why you. Or no ice cream for you. All right. Well, you've got that coach. It's you. We just need to start to let that coach step outside of ourselves so he or she can start coaching us, right? Now, you might think that you're already coaching yourself, right? Well, you might say, well, all right, I got to start this damn project, soon, or there's going to be hell to pay, right? Or, what if I did it this way instead of that way? Mm-hmm. That'll maybe help you get things done, but that's not coaching. That's just inner dialogue, right? To coach yourself so as to dramatically improve your outcomes, boost your willpower and motivation. You really do have to step outside, and really you do have to have a talk with yourself, crazy as this may sound. Now, specific types of self-talk have the power to self-persuade and self-motivate, to actually crystallize what you should be focused on, to help you refocus when ruminations yank you off course. They can help you see things more strategically and make better decisions. Perhaps most importantly, it is the technique that can help you stop making the same mistakes over and over and over again, to break bad habits and to form powerful new ones, right? So believe it or not, mumbling to yourself as you stumble down the street is actually a sign of enlightenment and a major contributor to your success. So here's a hack. Here's the way to use this every day, any day, anytime. So so I want to just share a little bit about the science of this. So there are researchers at the University of Michigan asked volunteers to give a speech with just 5 minutes of mental preparation, right? So you got to give a speech, you only get 5 minutes to prepare. And they asked half the subjects to prep by talking to themselves and to address themselves in the first person as I need to do this, I need to do that. The other half were directed to call themselves you, or to use their own names. Alan, you're going to do this. Alan, you got to do that. Alan will do this. Both groups noted the content of their internal dialogue as they were preparing their speech. And the results were amazing in two ways. First, those who used I had a mental monologue along the lines of, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I can't prepare a speech in 5 minutes without notes, right? It was all about negativity. But those who used their own names were more likely to give themselves support and advice, saying things like, you can do this. You've given a ton of speeches before. They sounded more rational and less emotional in their inner dialogue. So this phenomenon is called psychological distancing. It's almost like you are duping yourself into thinking about you as though you were another person.
Love it.
And actually, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love it. And what occurs to me is that when somebody asks for help and you want to give help to people, you never have that negative dialogue.
Right.
You think, oh, you can't do this. Who are you to do that? Right? You always encourage them naturally, but you don't do that to yourself. And
that is so true.
That's what occurs to me.
That is so true.
But,
that is exactly what happens with psychological distancing. You treat yourself as you would treat others, right?
Right.
So using the second and third person, the you, or calling yourself by your name, as opposed to I, you create that psychological distance. And it's actually a technique that's used in several psychological therapies that help manage anxiety and emotional distress. But most importantly, in addition to these powerful self-regulatory effects, the second and third person group, they were calmer and more confident, and they performed better on the task than those who referred to themselves using I or me. So for sure, the pronouns matter when you're doing self-talk. So that's the key. Talk to yourself in the second person. By the way, LeBron James does this. Malala does this. When you see her interviewed, she will talk about how, well, Malala this and Malala that. Brilliant stuff. And by the way, another key to powerful self-talk is to say it out loud. Say how you're coaching yourself out loud. Hey, Alan, let's not do that. A real quick example of this is, you get a little bit tired, and what you might do is you might want to jump on this thing and jump into your Instagram or see what's happening or check the news headlines, et cetera. When you really should be staying focused on the thing that you're doing, right. Well, you can say, hey, Alan, saying yes to this means Alan is saying no to that work over there. And that work is what I'm doing now. So and saying it out loud, crazy as it may sound. So that's it. I hope that these hacks can be put to use.
Oh, yeah.
Try to keep things simple and logical.
Yeah.
Again, all based on scientific evidence.
Yeah, these are great. And, another thing occurred to me at the end there where you were talking about, using that third person. I remember seeing some videos recently about TED Talk. It was a TED Talk, and the gentleman was talking about anxiety and panic attacks. And one way he was able to get over this, and what he teaches, is to identify that negative self-talk as a separate individual. He even gives it a name, George, right? And he calls it George. And George is the negative self-talk versus all the positive stuff. And so he was able to overcome his anxiety and panic by going through and identifying that mind that is not supportive.
That's neat. I got to find that TED Talk.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. And
is exactly, I was saying, this psychological distancing is a technique used in a bunch of therapies that help manage anxiety and emotional distress. I love that you called that out.
That's fantastic. So if you want more of this information that Alan produces in Crusher TV, please find him. We have links below where you can subscribe to Crusher TV. And we also have a free gift for you today. Alan, you're going to give away your Productivity Accelerator video series. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because there's a link below where people can join.
You bet. So this is a free 4-video series. The first video is called How to Plan Your Day Like a Badass. I'm from New Jersey. It's the way we talk. I'm sorry. Video 2 is How to Run Your Day Like a Badass. Why? Because the best laid plans often go awry. So how to run your day. And then the last 2 are procrastination hacks, really powerful ways to beat procrastination on particularly on your most hated tasks.
Got
So
it.
you'll want to check that out. Click the link and get that. You'll enjoy it. You'll thank me.
Awesome. So everything you need to know about Alan is below. You also have his email address. If you have any questions, you can send him a quick email, and he'll respond back to you quickly. And Alan, thank you so much for being on the ADHD Toolbox. Awesome conversation. And if you want more, you know how to get a hold of Alan. So thank you all for watching this episode of the ADHD Toolbox. Thank you, Alan, for being here.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
See you on the next episode.